If you have any interest in contracting in the UK, then the news in this video is probably going to be the best news you've heard for a long while. The 23rd of September 2022, what a glorious day. The Chancellor made a completely surprise, out of the blue announcement as part of his mini budget. Now that update is surrounding the off-payroll IR35 legislation. And what he's basically said is that the changes to that legislation that were introduced in 2021 are going to be reverted. So life is going to go back to the way it was. Like many, I think my initial reaction to this news goes like this. Yeah, that tired me out. Within this video, I'm going to talk about what this change in legislation means. We're going to have a look at how the job market might be affected in 2023, and more importantly, we're going to consider, should you be handing in your notice today? The IR35 policy is not a new policy. In fact, it was first released way back in 1999. And since its incorporation, it didn't really cause that many headaches until recently. And the reason for that is because over the years, the policy has been updated and it's become more and more stringent. And the update that was made in 2021 changed the game and created a complete mess for the industry. Now, IR35, it's not very sexy. It's a policy which is all about tax. Now, as you would imagine, every single government wants to squeeze as much tax money from people as they can. Regardless if they get paid loads and they're paying loads of tax, they need as much tax as possible. And according to the government, there's two different types of contractors. The first type of contractor, the great type of contractor, they love them. They're service-based people. They have maybe multiple contracts, maybe like a plumber or electrician. They're self-employed people. Now there's another type of contract, those naughty contractors, and these are called inside IR35. And historically, what these inside IR35 contracts look like, they look exactly like a permanent employee. So they turn up to an office, they might do the same 9 to 5, they use the same equipment, they use the same chairs, software, whatever it might be. If you're in a building, you probably couldn't tell the difference between one or the other. The only real difference is down to the contract they have. Now, obviously, if you're permanent, you're going to have some sort of sick pay, you're going to have holiday pay, you're going to have some sort of benefits, pension contribution, that kind of stuff. If you're just a contractor, then you're just going to be there for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. For some people, it could be 2 or 3 years. And what the government claims is that contractors should pay exactly the same amount of tax as permanent employees. This kind of sounds fair enough. The problem is, to become a contractor, you need to think about risk and reward. Once you change an outside contract to an inside contract, the difference in take home between a permanent role and a contract role shifted significantly. Now, obviously, companies couldn't magically afford to pay 30, 40, 50% more to their contractors so they could take home the same amount of money. And with this impact to contractor remuneration that made it much more difficult to decide which was the correct career path to take. Do you go the safe route, the full-time route, where you get all those lovely perks and benefits and pension schemes? Or do you gamble? Do you go for the contracting route, potentially getting paid a little bit more with the increased likelihood that you'll be out of contract for longer and potentially actually making less money with more stress? Now, it seems that a lot of people came to the same conclusion, and that's the reason why there was a mass exodus of people moving from contracting into permanent over the last couple of years. And this made it even more harder for companies to hire people, because now they had smaller talent pool, all the great people had kind of gone permanent, and they still only had a fixed budget. And this is the reason why it was a complete mess for everyone. Now, what the change in IR35 did is it basically put the onus on who decided if someone was inside or outside IR35. Historically, it was left to us as contractors to go, yep, I'm outside, and the reason why I'm outside is maybe I've got some freelance work, doing some contracting, I'm using my own bit of software. However, in 2021, the onus was put onto the employer. So the employer had to decide first off if a role was inside or outside. This meant that there was a load of extra admin work. It was basically a lot more complicated to hire people. The change actually meant that there was less contractors, and it made it harder for employers to get contractors This is why the last update to IR35 made things so difficult. There were less contractors on the market, which meant it was harder to staff projects within budgets, which ultimately affected a company's bottom line. This is why the news about IR35 within the mini budget has been welcomed by so many. Hopefully this news should mean there'll be now more contractors in the market, which should stabilise prices. This should mean that companies can now more easily staff their projects, which hopefully will kickstart the economy. Now, if this news has tempted you to maybe get back into contracting, then be aware that the legislation has changed slightly. IR35 has not gone away. What the change in policy means is that the contractor now has a greater legal responsibility to understand the legislation. If you're interested in contracting, what do you need to know in order to comply with the law? The new updates to the IR35 legislation won't come into play until the end of the current financial year, which is April 2023. To stress, IR35 is not going anywhere. We still have inside and outside for IR35. It's just now up to the contractor to determine their own status. As a contractor, this means that you need to check if you're inside and outside. And if you don't, you're going to be the one who'll be punishable by the law. Now, in terms of will you be audited by Hmrc, the chances are very, very doubtful. According to a 2014 study made by Contractors, they estimate that there used to be over 1 million freelancers and contractors combined within the UK total. This means that it was close to impossible for Hmrc to actually fully audit everyone. Now, just because the chances of you getting audited are slim, that does not mean you should break the law. Rules be rules and laws be laws. With the responsibility back with the contractor to determine their own tax status, they now have slightly more responsibilities. However, they also have more power when it comes to agreeing a contract. Now, this could mean including clauses in a contract with things like using your own equipment, using your own software. You might say you have to work from home. You might not agree to work rigorous 9 to 5 hours. You might be able to substitute yourself. You might be able to work with multiple contracts at the same time. This is the time to add my disclaimer. I am definitely not a tax expert. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. So when it comes to structuring your own contracts, speak to a legal professional, get advice. Don't just take the word from someone on YouTube. Although if you are thinking about getting into contracting, however, you're worried about being audited or you're worrying about accidentally breaking the law, then there is a very simple solution: insurance. Yes, as a business, there is special IR35 insurance that will help pay for any advice you may need, any expense going to tribunal if you get audited. Even though the chance of you being audited is very slim, it's better to cover your bases, and I recommend that you look into this type of insurance. The update to the IR35 legislation is pretty much the only positive contracting news story that I've heard in the 12 years since I've been interested in this topic. Just because we could potentially go back to the glory days, does this mean that we should all go into our work, hand in our notices, and all flood back to contracting? And sadly, the answer to that is not very easy. Now, personally, I think one of the reasons why this change came, and it's so out of the blue, is that 2023 is not looking like it's going to be a very good economic year. Now, there's a world economic crisis going on. We're all well aware of Russia and Ukraine, and the issue with inflation because of all the gas. Now, there's also a load of other negative things going on in the world. So there's inflation everywhere. China might default because of some housing projects. The British pound dropping to new lows because of the mini budget. America, they're having a housing crisis. A lot of the big tech companies are making mass redundancies, including the Google and Meta, Gap, Goldman Sachs, and Nordstrom. Now, these few examples are definitely not an exhaustive list. Now, if you want to use a tool like layoffs.fyi, you can even monitor in real time what the layoff situation looks like in the tech sector. There's been a recent study by PwC, and they interviewed 722 US executives. And pretty much the results saying that 50% of them were anticipating reduction in headcount, 52% in a hiring freeze, and 44% said that they're rescinding job offers as we speak. With all that doom and gloom being said, one positive outlook is that UK has currently got the lowest unemployment rate since 1975. The IR35 update is great news for contractors. However, it comes in a time of very high uncertainty. High energy prices, combined with high interest rates, mixed with high inflation, will likely mean that people have less to spend in 2023. Now, when people spend less, this means the economy slows down, and the chance of a recession occurring increases. Now, in times of recession, there is less jobs and higher unemployment. Now, a typical recession lasts around 17 months. So it's impossible for me now to predict the exact economic picture and how it will look like in April. However, we have two competing factors. On one hand, we have some news which will hopefully expand the number of contracting jobs in the market. However, if we're in a recession, then there's a high chance that there's going to be less jobs overall. So this leaves us with a final question. Is contracting right for you or not? Obviously, I can't answer what's the right career path for you. When I was younger, one of the most important things about a career for me was salary. I wanted to be able to see the world, go to any festivals I wanted to go to, buy any gig ticket, go to any party, while actually being able to save and become financially free. And this is the benefit that a 10-year career in contracting gave me. It gave me some level of financial freedom. So what this update to the legislation means is that it should be more financially rewarding getting into contracting again. Now, obviously, salary alone shouldn't be the only determining factor in you making a big career change. This is why I recommend that you sit down and get a really clear picture about what you want in life and where you'd like your career to head. Certain jobs are definitely only possible via permanent employment, things like a CTO or a CMO. Now, since I left contracting 2 years ago, the roles that I've taken have been roles that I couldn't have done previously. So one role allowed me to manage multiple teams, another role was more sales-based and allowed me to pitch to some of the biggest brands in the world. And this is something that I couldn't have done just in contracting alone. The final bit of food for thought that I'm going to share with you is all around time and how you value it. Now, as a permanent employee, you'll very likely have a contract with your employer that says you're going to work for 36 or 40 hours a week, whatever. In reality, that is just a number. And there's actually a really big expectation that when projects loom, that you're going to work long evenings, you're going to work weekends, cancel holidays, you'll do whatever for the good of the company. Yeah, gotta love those companies. Now, in reality, this type of expectation isn't generally put on a contract. Looking at a lot of growing news articles, there's a trend called quiet quitting. In the quiet quitting movement, a lot of the under 35s are basically saying, I'm going to come to work, I'm not going to sign up to hustle culture, I'm going to leave on the dot at 5:30. If you're currently working in a job that you're not loving, you know that you've checked out a little bit and you're not giving the world your best, then this could be a great indication that it's time for a career switch. I'm not saying that if you're unhappy, then contracting is this magic silver bullet solution that's going to make everyone happy. It's not. As long as you live in an area where there's plenty of contracting work, I think the main reason why people don't get into contracting is because they don't like thinking about that uncertainty and that extra added risk. Risk. So if you're really considering getting into contracting, the universal truth is that there's always going to be some doom and gloom news story as to why you shouldn't do something risky. And if you're really serious about this, the only way to move forward is to take that leap of faith. And just because you take that leap of faith, that doesn't guarantee success. You could actually end up being worse off financially. You'll definitely have to do more job interviews, and you're definitely going to have to work with more recruiters, which may or may not be a good thing depending on who you are. Now, just because when I was contracting for 10 years, I got paid more money, I had a great time, and I found success, that doesn't guarantee you'll find the same. As a salaried employee, unless your workplace makes you redundant unexpectedly, you're not going to have to worry about where your next paycheck comes from. And this is where you have to decide which of the career pillars are most important to you. You need to factor in the amount of risk that you're willing to take. You need to think about your career growth and what sort of roles and responsibilities you can see yourself doing. You need to think about your financial freedom. Do you want to retire early? If so, do you need to make more money quicker or over the long term? And finally, and more importantly, you need to think about how you want to spend your days. Do you want to be working with a constant bunch of new teams, or would you like to work with the same people for many years? Now, if you add all of these things up into your internal computer, you're going to get an idea of which path is right for you. The point I'm trying to get at is that deciding on a career path isn't just a binary yes or no. Now, yes, the IR35 rules are being reverted. However, as I've gone over, the future for 2023 isn't looking as bright. And this means that there's probably going to be more risk around contracting than there was a few years ago. If you are new to contracting and you think contracting is right for you, because you have 5 or 6 months before the new legislation comes in, now is a perfect time to make sure that you have your foundation set. And what I mean by this is, have you got your own private limited company? Do you know what that means? Do you have an accountant? Are you VAT registered? Do you have savings to fall back on so you can go a few months without worrying? Do you have business insurance to cover for Hmrc? Do you know what type of business insurance you need? There's loads of things that you need to tick so you can get ready to go contracting. So this is the third or fourth video that I have done on IR35, and every single time I release one of these videos, I always get lots of comments, so please don't make this the exception. I am really generally interested to hear what people's feedback are on this latest update. I'm assuming everyone's really positive. However, with that twist of the 2023 outlook, I'm really interested in, are people going to go back? Are you recruiters all happy about this news? Can you see any issues? Let me know. Now, if you have found any sort of value in this video, you could do me 2 solids. First, if you click on the like button, I'd very much appreciate it. Clicking like helps me with the magic YouTube algorithm, also helps the channel. Secondly, smash the subscribe button to become a bona fide living legend and to ensure you keep up to date with my next IR35 update. See if my predictions come true. Otherwise, I hope like me, you're celebrating, have a bit of a pint down the pub, because we could go back to the good life again maybe in a few years. Anyway, until next time, happy coding.